Okay, one thing we do in our line of business, and I think this is actually an interesting grid for you to review at some point, we try to build a 2x2 matrix. If you ever go into the consulting profession, if you can take any situation and put it on a 2x2, that's what consulting is. You get all the ideas of others at the company, and the reason you can get ideas, it's like, give me your watch and I'll tell you the time. That's often what consultants do. The reason it's effective is because sometimes these organizations don't allow the good ideas to trickle up. So it takes a third-party person to go in there and extract those ideas, and then they try to distill it out and explain to the board of directors, hey, this is right under your nose, why aren't they doing this? Hey, yeah, why aren't they doing it? Let's vote on it. What we like to do is build a 2x2 of strategic health and operational health. If you think about it, financial health is probably the other aspect. But financial health, not really what fixes a business, it fixes its balance sheet. Strategic health and operational health are core to the business's ability to generate money and the investor's ability to make a return. So what we like to do is rank them from strong, average, weak strategic health, weak, average, strong operational health. And where you fall on that 2x2 matrix is how we would proceed on what we do with that investment or with that turnaround client. We'll cover one of them just to kind of give you an example. Let's talk about a company that has strong strategic health, but it has weak operational health. Well, I put the letter B there in that nexus point there. When there is a weak operating position, an average or strong strategic position, average or strong, so these are both B's, an operating turnaround strategy is usually needed. What does that mean? In the turnaround business, there tends to be operational turnarounds, strategic turnarounds, and financial restructurings. Financial restructurings are negotiating with the bank, the bondholders, the equity, sometimes using a bankruptcy proceeding to fix all that, sometimes trying to do it without the bankruptcy. We call that an out-of-court restructuring. That's stuff that can be fixed in a day. The negotiation might take longer, but when everybody agrees on what's to be fixed, it's basically a turn on the light and it's done. When you have strong or average strategic health, it means the business needs to be run better, but thankfully, your products have good position in the market. Your company's a competitor. You're able to sustain your market share. So this is about getting the widgets to the widget machine more efficiently. It means running the business better. It means maybe getting new distribution channels, new logistics. The good news is you don't have to change your products. You have Coca-Cola. You just don't produce it efficiently, but everyone's buying it. There's always going to be a revenue umbrella for it. So there's an example of what we do. Where you don't want to be is in no man's land where you have weak strategy, weak operations. This is where folks like me would say, liquidate it. Sell it off the best way you can, as fast as you can on a fire sale, and give the bank back their money, and hopefully there's a little bit extra to trickle down. Underperformance. Well, this is actually interesting. So we talked about strategic turnarounds. We talked about operating turnarounds. The people that work in this world tend to be private equity folks, general managers, investment bankers, lawyers, accountants. And they all kind of come at this from different angles. But the way that my firm looks at this is we say, let's look at all the competitors that make widgets in this industry. Let's take the mean or the median, depending on what you like, and let's look at the people who are the top performers in the space. Let's agree that it's probably unlikely that the company we just bought together could be the best player in the industry, but we know we can do things better. So let's disclose our new benchmark on how we should perform is the median or the mean of the performance. Call it gross margins, call it revenue growth, call it EBITDA. Let's look at all of them. Now let's talk about where we're at today. We call it the going rate trajectory of the business. The airplane's going down, we're coming towards a mountain, we might crash. The average competitor's up here. There's a gap. We need to close that gap. That's how we're going to make money. We're going to buy low here, we're going to get the business up there, and we're going to sell high. So we have to close those two gaps. We have to close the operating portion of the gap. We have to close the strategic portion of the gap. Those two things combined are what we call the performance gap. And that's what this is all about. It's finding a company that has a good strategic position. Maybe it has weak operating conditions or average, but we know we can make it better if we buy it. We're not going to pay the seller for it because we shouldn't pay them for what's going to be done in the future by us with our capital. But then we have to have a plan. We have a plan how to close that gap. And that's where the investment returns are made. And that's how private equity folks make money. Oh, great question.
Would you say then it's too tough to take a company that's an A and re-strategize it and then find an operating procedure for that company? Like you said, when you think there's an A, you liquidate it. It's too tough to, sit down and think of a new strategy.
It's a great question. I was at a large institutional private equity firm where I worked, and we had a plastic injection molding company that all its plants were in the United States. If you know anything about plastic, it's all done in China. So this was an investment that was bought through a bankruptcy process. And the people who orchestrated the purchase of it said, well, we can transition this business from what it produces today, keep it in the United States, but we'll go into like the medical products line. In the end, it was failed. I'm not saying you can't do it, but in the end, it failed on us. The reason it failed on us because we transitioned from plastic spoons and knives to medical products, we were still just pumping hot plastic through tubes. So and everybody wanted to be in that space. So all of our competitors are going into it, and we're getting squeezed on price and all that. So it's very hard to transition unless it has good bones. The other problem with it is usually to change strategy requires new capital. Often to change operations, you can starve some things and channel it to others. The other thing is size. When you buy too small, you might not have a big enough portfolio of things to play with. So it's not impossible. Miracles are done, people pull it off. But now you talk about beta. I don't know if you talk about beta in your finance classes, but that's basically the riskiness in the business, doing that to higher beta. So anyways, the performance gap, closing the strategic gap, closing the operational gap. And we'll talk about how you do that. Too much. Okay, so that's all great for a classroom lecture. But then there are things that happen in the world. And we call those the externalities. So you have your performance gap, the strategic portion of it. That's what you produce, how it competes, its share of the market, so on and so forth. The operational gap, how you actually do it. So this is what things are you doing, and are you doing those things right? But then you have an external environment. Things happen in the world. Unfortunately, there's 9/11s out there. There's earthquakes that can destroy plants. There's collapses in the macroeconomy. I'll give you an example of one of my portfolio companies. This was the largest manufacturer of toys in the United States. Again, why we made toys in the United States, I don't know. But we did. And we bought this business. It was what's called a Chapter 22. You're going to hear about this in your business careers. Chapter 22 is something that goes into bankruptcy twice. Because one time's an 11. Twice is a 22. There's never been a 44 in the United States, but there has been 33s. Pan Am Airways might be an example of 33. Anyways, we had this business. We bought it low. We were turning the corner. Everything was working out great. Part of closing the operational gap is we made swing sets. Kids, they go in the backyard and they swing. Well, part of the operational gap closers was let's produce, the chain's pretty important to a swing set. We can produce it more cheaply and put more money on the bottom line. So we started buying those chains from China.
Oh.
We saved a lot of money. So we get to the season, it was like a big camel hump when we sold a lot of these. We got to the season, we had something like 45,000 of these units sitting at the Toys R Us, the Targets, the Walmarts. Those chains that we bought and put money on the bottom line started snapping. Kids flying all over America.
Oh my gosh.
The Consumer Product Safety Council made us recall every single one of those. There were stacks of lawsuits, and that's an externality that we didn't plan. Now, it wasn't as simple as it sounds. Why would you ever buy this from China? The reality is we sampled them, we tested them, we put them on things that stretch them and all that. All the ones we had were doing fine. All you need is one swing set to break and kids to get hurt, and you can lose the war in the toy business. So there's an example of an externality. There's nothing we could have done to mitigate that, because conceivably, if we still produced those chains, it could have broke, the ones we were making. So it's a good example of externality.